informative, educational, objective, inclusive, comprehensive. This is Progress Report. Updates and conversations from the Government Information Service.
Good day and welcome to another episode of Progress Report. My name is Ivan Khanna, my lovely co-host Gleneva Haj, and we have with us in studio today the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs.
Blessings and welcome. I'm very happy to be here this afternoon.
Finally, you're back.
Finally, I'm back. New year, new opportunities.
New season.
New season, everything new.
And you're smiling. That means you got a lot to talk about today.
But I'm a red tie today.
All right. You put on the red tie today. We're going to deep dive in a lot, but just catch up what's been happening in the ministry. Don't touch on the hot button topics, hot button issues just yet. So I mean,
because we know what's coming.
We know what's coming. Don't talk about minimum wage just yet. Don't talk about any immigration issues or labor issues. What has been happening in your ministry? What has been happening in government? If you can round it up for us in 2 minutes.
Good. For me, it has been the experience of helping people with the issues. Literally every day, most of my day is consumed with meetings with people on immigration, labor issues, land issues, planning issues, and it just sometimes is that they don't have the information, they just don't know. So we are able sometimes to help them to get information they need. Sometimes it all requires is a call. Sometimes it's people's lack of information, but I mean, for me as minister, that ability to be helping people to get through the basic issues has been the game changer for me as minister. Okay. Helping people, making people's lives a little easier through the ministry.
Okay.
You know exactly where I'm going with this.
Go right ahead.
Because it's very interesting, and again, I say this so often. It's why I enjoy doing Progress Reports. Because for me, it's about educating the public. It's about ensuring that the public has access to information that they ought to have access to. So when I hear the minister speak about just being able to better direct persons to information or having to be able to tell them, I know that you are Minister of Home Affairs, Immigration, Lands, and does physical planning, does
Constitutional Affairs, but that's not
radio. Thank you. Information and broadcasting falls on, and so having this discussion then falls right in line with in your portfolio. Do you think that we have enough platforms to ensure that the general public has access to the information that they tend to come to you? You said that you answer a lot of questions.
Yes.
Is that information readily available, or is the system so set up that they must come and ask questions?
Frankly speaking, it's a bewildering, bureaucratic maze for the average person out there. Even I, who worked in the system as a civil servant for many years and having to navigate to other departments, it is bewildering at times. I think the government's website itself is
archaic.
Well, yes.
Needs to go.
It needs
makes no sense.
Major revamping.
Yeah.
A lot of departments have gotten into Facebook pages, which has been helpful. For example, I have commended the Labor Department. Now they post a lot of job vacancies, which is really commendable.
Yes.
But I think overall in government, it's like you're going through a maze trying to find information. And this is where I think we have come in from where I sit in the ministry, helping persons to navigate through very, very basic issues. I'll give you an example. So a lady comes into the department, into the ministry this week. She has a son. He'd have gone to school for more than 5 years in Angola. And she's interested in him working, but of course, all the properties that he goes to will tell him that he needs a work permit. Below a certain category of worker, a property will not take out a work permit for you. So you're talking about supervisory, higher management. So I said, but has he gone to school 5 years and more? Yes. So I said, apply for exemption for him. You know, so that was like a game changer. So a lot of people don't know.
So you're saying once you've gone to school 5 years or more,
5 years or more,
you apply for an exemption.
you can apply for an exemption, which is simply a work permit minus the fees. And right now, that exemption is only tied to primary, secondary, and sixth form. In my work plan for this year, I am going to increase it to local tertiary institutions.
So,
Local tertiary.
ACC.
So ACC,
okay.
the North Hill
Comprehensive Learning
Comprehensive
Center.
Learning Center, or the UWI Open Center in Angola. So we are going to increase that to include them.
Okay, nice.
So once you have done your 5 years or more, you get an exemption to work.
So you
Are
said,
these are these 5 consecutive years, or can the years, if let's just say we know that sometimes persons come in and for whatever reason they had to go back to their home country, so they did 3 years in primary school, they went back home to their home country, and then they came back and did their final 2 years of high school here. Is it 5 years continuous, or can it
5
be
years continuously.
Okay.
5 years continuously. Like you may have been a year in fifth form, a year in sixth form, you went to ACC for a year, then you went on to UE for another 2 years. You understand?
Okay.
Once you can keep that chain rolling,
okay.
you know.
Now that you mentioned that, I'm not sure it falls under your remit. The Nomad program that we had during COVID, that's under your
That's
ministry
the
as well?
intention is to place it under the immigration department.
Okay, because it was a
that is the
tourism.
intention. It was a tourism initiative that came out of COVID. It was basically handled under the tourism department, but the plan is to make it its home under immigration. So
Okay.
we're working towards that.
Okay, and you spoke just now about the whole education thing. What about persons that from sister islands in the Caribbean and they want to be in Angola, they're going to school, maybe going to school online. We have to grow our population. This is where I'm heading with this. We want heads and beds in terms of our rental properties. Can somebody be going to school online? Is this something that we can look at? Just thinking out of the box now. Can somebody be going to school online but make Angola their base? I mean, we have stable internet here. We have stable...
So a student digital nomad
A
as
student,
opposed to
yeah.
a walking digital nomad.
Right.
That is an interesting proposition.
I'm just thinking
I'm
that...
open to ideas.
Okay, I'm just thinking that technically we're doing that now with the medical students. I mean, they're in a specific program and the
Right.
thing, but I'm just saying we gotta find a way to attract the right people. And if you're gonna attract somebody that, like, for instance, I lived in the VI, like, WAPA to go off every day sometimes. It ain't a nice thing, you know. They've gotten better. Shout out to the folks at WAPA. I got some friends there. The love of my life. But I'm saying, like, and I see other Caribbean islands. I have friends that complain about just the challenge it is to just complete their online schooling because of the instability of internet and power is off and then access, and then we just had the library and they're talking about all these things that they have there. So I'm just thinking, like, maybe that's an avenue that we can go down, because if we have a student population here, I think that can do something for us. They don't necessarily have to come and work, but they're here studying, rental units,
Contributing to the economy.
contributing to the economy.
That's a really good idea, and I think something that we can certainly flesh out and discuss further from where I sit.
See, that's what happens here.
Yeah.
Breaking news.
I want to go back a little bit in terms of outside of government's website. That, again, shout out to the guys at Dites, the
Love
guys
them.
and girls at Dites.
Love them.
But beyond that, you know, we have spoken about the challenges with the existing government website. Outside of the government website, is the onus on individual departments to ensure that this information is, again, easy to navigate. And if not on the departments, as the minister, as both the Minister of Lands and Labor and Immigration, those very front-facing departments, and those departments that there are lots of forms and certain processes that are sometimes difficult to navigate. Is that something that you're actively looking into to be able to not just have to on a one-on-one basis to tell persons, but to centralize that information, to have it there for the public so that, okay, I don't have the minister's number. I don't want to have to go into the minister's office. I don't have the time to leave my office to do so. I want to be able to click, find a form, find easy to navigate directions. I want to give an example.
You know, okay.
I don't want to cut you off,
the UK government website. If I want to apply, and we apply for UK passport, you do everything online. You submit your photos, you do even the certifying that this person, you do all of this online. But it walks you through step by step in terms of, okay, this is Form B, you fill out Form B if you need to. I recently had to do that in Barbados for my daughter's Bayesian passport. And there's a place that I can go. I have no idea how the Bayesian system works. I'm not Bayesian, she is. And so I go and then I type in Barbados passport application and it tells me exactly what I need to do, which form, what do I need to get, where do I submit, where do I get the documents so it goes as far as you need to have documents, your national ID, you get this from X, Y, and Z. Is there a plan in place to have something similar?
If I can, before you, Minister, because you're jumping into something that the PS in finance and myself and even the guides in DITES have started talking about from last year. I know we mentioned this. We wanted to roll out actually a GIS site, which will. The thought process is over time, it'll become the central place for government information. So we have a site map. We actually already have a template and stuff. But the challenge is the funding for this, because it's going to require quite a bit. And we didn't budget for it because no, you have to have somebody to go around and vet every department and get the information, standardize the forms. Everything it's a massive task. And the problem with the current site is it's built on old technology. That PHP, nobody wants to touch that because they'll break it. And you don't want to be the one to break the government site.
Listen, there's quite a bit, and to the benefit of DITES, there's quite a bit of information. It's a little bit difficult to navigate, but there is quite a bit of information on
information
the gov.ai site.
Even
I use it quite often.
It's a lot of information, yes. Sometimes it's just getting to it, but tremendous volume of information there. But to get back what you were saying, Glenita, I should be able in this modern age to pull up every ounce of information I want on the screen in front of me. As of now, I would have to go to perhaps immigration, I have to call labor, I have to call statistics, I'll have to call lands. Every area has its own silo, its own thing compartmentalized. I want us to move to a stage like sometimes when you go abroad, when they pull up your name, everything about you comes up. Everything about you. They can see whatever there is about you at a glance. I want us to move to that stage where we have the appropriate securities, because of course we don't want everything out there. But that's where the stage we need to move at, because information is instantaneous, it's immediate. And a lot of times we have to sometimes send an email and wait for a response, and it takes 2 or 3 days. I want to see us use the information superhighway in a way that speeds up. So you talk about the whole nomads and the students and the digital, but we got to harness it in a way that access to information is instantaneous.
Yeah, I agree.
We have land. We have now put all our land records in a database. So how can you access information you still have to go into the Department of Lands and pay for a search, and then they will do the search for you. I think they are moving to a stage where maybe the architects and others will have that kind of broader access. You understand? But to me, there's so much out there that we are not moving aggressively towards. A lot of it is centered around funds and finance and everything else. But man, there's so many exciting possibilities. And you know what kind of gets to me, frankly, too? We have too many ID cards. We have a voter's card, a social security card, a driver's license. I mean, when I look at my wallet, I see the number of cards that I have in there.
Oh, good.
I wonder if the minister was tapping into my conversation earlier.
Yeah, it's a lot, and sometimes you got to make sure.
As long as, ladies and gentlemen, disclaimer: the minister is not saying that he wants to chip anybody. Okay, that'll be the next thing on Monday.
No.
That'll be the next thing on Monday, Melly. No, that'll be Monday morning. They want the chip. They want the chip.
But Ivan, I'm not going there with you. I am going to go to the minister and I'm going to ask seriously though. I agree with you. We have a number of ID cards, some that are recognized for something, some that is not for something else. Do you have plans for us to move towards a national ID card that would somewhat
capture pretty much everything?
Yes. Social security number.
That has been talked about. That is something this administration would support. The mechanism to get to it, I think, is a little way off.
Yeah, because will that be something like the health card?
I was about to ask because we already have the. I think we print the driver's license, the voter ID. I mean, there was amazing technology. If I may give kudos to whoever was behind the COVID vaccine cards, because those are some of the most advanced COVID vaccination cards anywhere in the world.
We get a lot of commendation for that. If I have traveled and I show it, we get major commendation.
Because it's not just the card. The fact that you can scan the QR code and it goes, all of that information shows up on our website. So, I'm speaking from a place of ignorance here in terms of not knowing exactly what it takes to do a national ID card. But if we already have the basics of being able to produce such cards, do we not just have the building blocks, I guess, to be able to have that national ID card?
Yeah, but you also got to look at the security built into it too.
Okay.
Because let me tell you, with everything in terms of technology, somebody going to figure out a way to hack it and use that information. So
outside of that, the only thing I'm happy about is that, maybe not necessarily happy about, in the US, your child born, the first thing they're giving is a social security number. After they got a unique number and their birth certificate and stuff. With us, you don't get a social security number unless you're ready to work. They do that because of their tax structure. With our tax structure changing and stuff like that, we're going into seniors, free healthcare, and these type of things. You might have a need for more information. Do you foresee a time where the same national identifier, this national ID card, pinned to a number that tracks you throughout? Like, this number should track your school records. This number should.
So I'll use again Barbados as an example, because again I've just started looking into the process.
You went to Hastings?
I did, but I started looking into the process of applying for a passport for my daughter. She was born there. She has a Bayesian birth certificate. But that is as much as I did. Through no fault of my own or hers, I was not in Barbados I was not in Barbados simply to give her citizenship, if that makes sense.
I understand.
It was done for health reasons. But now that I'm going through the process and looking at what it is that I need to provide to get her Barbados passport, because she's automatically qualified for one, it asks for the child's national ID number, and I go, so that's the first step. But I like that it links and it tells you where you get that. What happens if you live outside of Barbados? What happens if you live inside of Barbados? Where do you go? Where do you apply? So it's given me a roadmap of what I need to get. So that's the link back to what you're saying, Ivan, in terms of everything being linked. Where's the child's ID card? Because that ID number must be placed on the Barbados passport application form. So there's linkages. This is your ID number. This is your passport number. They're tracking you.
Right. I mean, we're going in a good direction because I just recently applied for my passport too. And given the fact that my mother is from Antigua, and my dad is from here, I had to go through the whole long route. Father, mother marriage certificate, father birth certificate, father death certificate. You gone through all these things. I'm happy that they're able to now pull them up. I mean, I think it's a lot of people because it's one full sheet. But there's information there that I'm thinking that can start to suffice that. So you understand you have a unique number for your birth certificate. Maybe that might be the start. I don't know how we'll fix the system, but I think we need to start having those conversations at least.
Just to that point, Ivan, again, it's going back to what information do I need?
Right.
If it is that my father was Anguillian but my parents wasn't married, it's a bit about being able to access that information without me having to pick up a phone and call somebody. Can I type in what do I need, and it comes up. So I'm hoping, Minister, that the next time we have you on Progress Report, we can have a progress report on what is the plan to move us somewhat closer. Right. I know Ivan spoke a little bit about what they're doing from a GIS standpoint, but just to move us a little bit closer there.
Centralized place for information.
So, a thought came to mind. So right now we have the issue with grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So grandchildren automatically get their rights in Angola. The great-grandchildren have a 5-year residency requirement.
Why?
So they have to live in Angola for 5 years, the great-grandchildren.
But why the grandchildren getting the great-grandchildren have to live for 5 years?
Yeah, because remember, the great-grandchildren are, as you could say, spreading the family tree a little further. Right?
Okay.
So when I got in the office and I started getting these requests for the great-grandchildren, and then they said there's a 5-year residency requirement, but then how do you have somebody in Angola for 5 years? Right?
So then those persons would need work permit or work permit exemptions?
Work permits. So the question is, what kind of work permit do you give somebody who's a great-grandchild?
Can they get the same way how you do for persons? Because a lot of things is policy.
But the great-grandchildren might not be working.
No, I'm saying this.
You get an interesting point. So, right. So the point I want to make is this, right? The point I want to make is this. So we had a situation with the great-grandchildren in particular, because the grandchildren are automatic. The great-grandchildren have a 5-year residency requirement, but they have to take out work permits because that's the only legal way they could work. Because under the immigration law, legally, you can only be here for a year at a time. You realize that, right? The chief immigration officer can only grant you time up to a year in the first instance.
Yeah.
And then you have to leave and it starts all over again. So I was able to work with the chambers to bring out a policy that says once you are recognized as a great-grandchild, you automatically have that right now to your 5 years to live here.
Automatically.
Nobody gonna chase you off the island.
That's good.
If you want to work,
Different story.
you can get a work permit.
You can.
But it has not become a requirement for you to must have a work permit. You follow me?
Okay.
Okay? So if you want to relax for the 5 years or be with your parents or your grandparents or your other relatives, that's fine. If you want to earn a few dollars while you're here, then you're free to take out a work permit.
And they can do the same one that you spoke about earlier?
That's
No,
what,
a work permit.
My question would be, why a work permit and why not? Because we are already establishing that they're great-grandchildren of Anguillians. Why can't we go the same process of those persons who have gone to school here for 5 years and grant them waivers?
No, the exemption is very specific. The exemption deals with, in one instance, with the children for 5 years. You also have situations with the clergy, with pilots, with... There's a whole long
Specialty
list.
fields.
Specialty
Yeah,
fields.
but those
right?
exemptions are policies. It's not law.
What?
The exemption in terms of who gets waivers.
It's a policy. It's a policy that is established in the Labor Relations Act. It's established in law, and then in terms of the exemptions, again the categories are listed.
Okay.
Right.
So you're saying to make any significant change is going to affect multiple pieces of legislation?
It's going to affect multiple pieces of legislation, but at the end of the day, for the great-grandchildren, because we're having quite a few of them coming up now. A lot of them are from the DR, a lot of them are from Cuba, right? And two, we spoke earlier about the whole issue of identifying, proving that you're Anguillian, and that has been challenging at times.
Okay.
Yeah? So, for you to be recognized as the grandchildren or great-grandchildren, you have to provide a proof. Usually it has to be like birth papers and other things like that, And a lot of these things took place many years ago.
When registrations weren't.
Yes, was not as they used to be.
A lot
So,
of people rang birthday.
but one thing that I'm happy about since I have been minister especially is the ability to regularize that issue with the great-grandchildren, being able to have the time here if they want to, or if they choose to work, they can do so. And it's been working out really quite nicely.
Okay, so before we segue into the hot stuff, let me just ask a question. With all these little things that you've been saying, we don't have the census figures now, but do you see a little bump in our population with things like that? So you're expecting a little bump?
I'm expecting a big bump.
A big bump.
Right? And
So Angola is pregnant with possibilities. A big
And
bump.
let me tell you, one of the things in my work plan as well, right now it takes you 10 years for permanent residence. In my work plan for this year, I'm going to want to drop that number down to at least 7.
Okay, how does that impact stuff with the UK now? Because then when you get your Anguilla passport...
Permanent residence.
Permanent residence,
is
that has
not-
always been a policy decision of
Okay.
government. Because at one point, years ago, it used to be like 5 years, and they took it up, I think, to 7 and to 10. So that has always been a policy decision, right? In the Constitution, it takes you 15 years for Belanga. When we resume the consultations for the Constitution, we are looking at maybe dropping that requirement from 15 down to 12,
Okay.
right? Because the complaint has been for us,
You gotta talk about some stuff with the
People-
there.
persons, okay, 10 years gives you your permanent residence, and a year later or 2 years later, you can apply for a naturalization, which gives you the passport. Whereas for Belanga, you still gotta wait for the 15 years. So we are saying one of the recommendations we want to make is bring it down to 12. So it still still synchronizes
Okay.
with the permanent residence naturalization Belanga.
Okay. And all these are areas that you're looking at growing the population?
Yeah, because, for example, if a person gets permanent residence at 7 years, to me that's 3 years less for us, right? And then we're even looking at a second stream to that, where we are saying even considering 5 years if you are willing to invest in a house and land. If you are willing to put on a tangible stake in Anguilla. And you know why I'm so pleased about this? Because there are a number of foreign nationals, particularly from the DR, who get friends and acquaintances to buy land in their name, build houses. They supply the money, but they put these things in somebody else's name because, of course, they can't.
Because they want to avoid the alien and holding licenses process as well.
Well, yes,
Because there's a double edge to that as
There's a
well.
double
And
edge.
that's costly as well.
that's costly
is.
as well. You understand me? So we see this as a win-win for Anguilla, because if persons want to put on a stake in Anguilla, we should facilitate them within the best, easiest possible length of time.
How does that affect the current residency by investment program that is going? In terms of, there is the ongoing residency by investment program where
Right.
if you invest a particular amount of money, you get residence. So how does that fall in line with the 5 years if you are just investing in land of a lesser amount than what is spelled out in the residency by investment program? How does that
Right.
affect that process?
So the residency by investment speaks to a certain amount of investment that gives you that residence, right? This what we're talking about here with the permanent residence, that is an incentive to me to encourage persons to invest in Anguilla,
Right.
to want to build houses, because the average person may not have what that $750,000, whatever. I can't remember the figure off the top of my head
it's
right
about
now.
750.
Right, some in that region, right? But they can buy a little acre of land somewhere, a little half acre, and put on a house,
Right.
right? You understand?
I get that. So then again, my question would be, if you can go that route, why then does that not take away from the residency by
No.
investment program?
No, because the resident by the investment essentially is basically an immediate.
Oh, yes,
Okay,
one
so
time.
it takes away the 5 year
the wait
waiting
period.
period.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
I understand.
Ivan whispered something in my ear, and I contemplated whether or not I wanted to touch it, simply because it is such a hot button topic right now
Right.
in the BVI, with trying to regularize what they did. But I think it was looking at persons. They did some sort of a fast tracking, where they combined the residency with the belongership for persons who had exceeded all of them. Is that something? it's. I mean, at the end of the day, these are topics. The BVI is another BOT. It's something that they did. The question is, I know several persons who have been here, who's been here for 17, 20 years. But again, because the process is not that easy to navigate, or that they weren't told exactly where they can go and how to start the process, they've prolonged.
Yeah.
And they haven't done even the residency bit. So they've been here for that amount of time, and they don't even have permanent resident status.
You know, I am so surprised for the 2+ years I've been in office to see the sheer numbers of persons that have been here 17, 19, 20 years
Can you make a move on that?
and that never made a move. You know?
And I must say, I know some of those persons, and they said to me, you know, the process may seem intimidating because I don't know where to start. I don't know where to
They
go.
don't know. So I am telling them, look, for the belonger permanent residents, you go to the Immigration Department for Naturalization in these chambers. So even the whole aspect of acquiring information, the papers, the documents that were necessary, people just didn't know.
So why don't we run a campaign or something?
And I think that is
like
what I was
coming
getting
on to
at
Anguilla
earlier.
Day, like so Elvin from Gabs, good friend from primary school, Fats, that's why I call him. A couple of years back, you know, they do the Anguilla Day t-shirts, and he I think he took it from Minister Gums Marino when she was campaigning Anguillan enough, right? But the design had in the A was like the Anguilla flag, and the enough had in like the other flags. So people from St. Kitts, people from this. There are people from St. Kitts. There are people from Antigua, throughout the Caribbean. Our brothers and sisters, like you said, been here 19, 20 years. They're Anguillan enough at this point.
I mean, they have Anguillan children.
Yes.
They have Anguillan families.
Some of
they
them got
have
house and land.
all of it.
They have all of it, but they just don't have nothing that says they're Anguillan. Can't we just find some way to run a campaign? Take a week. Listen here, you've been here 15 years. We're gonna walk you through this process. Our 8-hour days from your ministry, immigration. Put this little team together and centralize everything for 1 week like these. Like they get people regularized, and just make sure that it's done, because in all honesty, a lot of these people do walk in and they ain't taking the time off to go 3 different offices.
That's it. That's why
I wasn't going. So I thank God I ain't going, because Ivan wasn't going.
and that's exactly what I was getting at, because if you don't know where to go, you don't know.
Yeah.
So I actually like that idea.
You know, remember last year we ran the amnesty? And I always keep telling people the amnesty was never about forgiving fees. It was creating a space that persons could regularize immigration and labor issues, you know. And I have constantly, over many press conferences, highlighted the fact that persons need to regularize their status if they achieve the 10 years, when they achieve the 15 or whatever, they can go in and apply. So from my end, from my ministry, we're actively pushing it, right? But to me, persons need, they say in the court of law, ignorance of the law is no excuse, right? And I think once persons are living in another person's country, they have an obligation to themselves, not just to be here existing, but to make sure that they're up to date. And you know, the unfortunate thing is, a lot of these persons are racking up
Fees.
a lot of fees, immigration fees.
I actually want to.
Talking $6,000, $10,000, $12,000. You understand me?
And that's why they ain't coming, because
So they're incurring large periods of overstay, which does not contribute to their ability to be able to apply.
because they wouldn't show that they
Overstay is illegal.
Gotcha.
You understand
So
me?
one thing on top of the
Yes,
next.
which is why, again, if you know that you have those to the amnesty, a lot of persons were
Okay.
like, well, if I didn't have the money to go in and do it before,
Okay.
where am I going to find the money now?
And another thing is with the work permits. So a lot of people are not keeping their work permits up to date either. And the work permit is a stamp that basically gives you
That counts.
that count.
But is the work permit being up to date the duty of the employed or the employer?
The employer, yes, but the employee also needs to make sure that their interests are not being undermined by the employer.
Good.
You
So,
understand me?
I actually want to take it a step.
You understand
I want
me?
to take it a
I gotta
step.
keep quiet now.
I want to take it a step further.
Let's
Okay,
be
go ahead.
frank. Let's
Uh-huh.
be frank, right? So we have situations where employers are not renewing the work permit. So sometimes you will find persons having to come in and renew 4, 5, 6 permits at a time. Otherwise than that, when they hit the 10 and 12 years, they're going to realize they're in a big problem.
I ain't touching that.
Good. I want to flip it before, because I know we are running a tight ship today, Ivan.
Right.
And we have some other very, very good stuff to get to.
Right.
Government is also an employer. And persons from outside of Angola who are employed by government get exemptions. And I'm getting to the lack of sometimes the lack of information flowing through government and through intergovernment departments. Those persons go in and get a letter from public admin to state that they are employed, and they take that letter to immigration to get a stamp. After 10 years, should immigration or public admin not flag this person and say, do you know that you are now eligible? And this is the process that you should go through to get. But that doesn't happen.
Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't.
Depends on who you know.
Okay, so it should not be sometimes.
It should
I'm
be all
asking
the
if
time.
it's not an automatic process that go, hey, I see based on this, you have been here 10 years, you are now eligible. This is what you need to do and what you need to bring in so as to move forward.
Well, I have read that at the Labor Department, and most of the time they would tell the persons when they reach. Because when I'm sending the work permits and I see 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, the question I ask,
And you sign every work permit.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's
remember that
that's a
saying.
work permit. Remember, if you're employed by government, you
Yeah.
don't get a work permit. It doesn't go through labor.
Right, it doesn't go through labor.
It goes through immigration. So I'm asking
Yeah.
for those persons who are employed by government, who are just going in, sending their letters, getting stamped. At which point do you say, because I know some of those people who are at 17 years.
Here's my problem with this. And no offense to the folks at public admin. My understanding of public admin is the HR department.
It is.
But I don't know what files and records they keep.
They keep.
I know they keep, but what does their database look like on any person that's employed by government? They should have these things popping up. Like, not because they don't, like, the private sector, they keep very, very strict records of who's employed, what they're doing. Not just when somebody mess up, you got a letter and fire, but what are these person's challenges? Where the health concerns? Like, if they raise this issue, that issue, like, what does it look like in public admin?
No, everything is there.
Everything is there?
Everything is there. Everything is there. I would have spent some time there as a PAS for public sector development. So all the information is there. They track you from the time you start to work until the time you retire.
Okay, check.
And you can go on your file, you can ask to do a search on your file, and you can go and read your employment history from the day you entered the public service until the day you retire.
I go and check tomorrow because I had started with teaching.
Yeah,
I want to see
you can ask.
There's no file there for me.
Sometimes the file's a little dusty.
Oh boy.
Because I recall
He's a little dusty.
Ivan,
No, I recall when my mother,
Girl, stop
when they would have submitted my mother's name for a nomination triangular day, and I went over there to get some information from her file. After a while, they do archive some of the files, they put them in boxes and they put them in storage, so we had to go through a lot of duster boxes.
Oh, wow.
You understand me? But the information is there. And I think we are moving out of a situation where we're beginning to digitize a lot of that information.
Awesome. That's pretty much, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Because I would like to think that we are moving into an age where, you know, Ivan, you mentioned Elvin, and I know he has started his countdown until
he needs to stop
hurricane
that,
season.
because nobody needs
But,
that kind of energy
you know,
right
the,
now.
the reality is that we know the damage that hurricanes cause when we live in the hurricane belt. So moving towards digitizing records and archived records, that is something that I think is the way to go. Nice.
I agree.
But we're now moving on as we watch the countdown, because I want to give this enough time. The minister came in here beaming.
Bright.
Beaming. Like he had a secret.
Yes.
Like he knew something we didn't know.
So what you know that we don't know?
And tell us.
Well, I'm not sure when this program is going to air.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Thursday the 20th, 4:20.
So I'll be getting the report of the minimum wage committee in my hands tomorrow.
So repeat that again, because me, Ivan was speaking a little bit. Want to make sure the people heard that.
Right. So after many months of very hard work, the diligent minimum wage committee is presenting to the minister a report of their findings.
Okay.
Awesome.
So now what's the next step with this report of their findings?
So we're going to get it. We're going to review it at the ministry. We're going to review it at cabinet, which is the premier and all my colleagues. And then it's have to go to EXCO, because of course we have to report to EXCO what has transpired. And then we're going to be coming back to the public, to the workers and the employers and others, to share the findings, get their feedback. And the final step is the House of Assembly.
So how far are we from actually establishing a minimum wage?
Right.
For
So
the layman.
a timeline. You're expecting the report tomorrow.
Okay.
Today.
Today, tonight,
yes.
tomorrow. Right. And then to me, it's going to be maybe a month, 6 weeks, depending on the length of consultation that we do, because persons may want a little more time. They may have a lot of things to say, a lot of comments to make. So we're not going to rush that process, but I would say 6 weeks to 2 months.
So the report is going to be public information?
Not public, because of course there are going to be things in there that is going to affect policies, that's going to affect how operations will change. But we certainly will be bringing the report to the public. So we're not going to put it out there in a physical document, but we're going to be having presentations, so we're going to be sharing the findings, the literature, the background.
Okay, gotcha.
So we're not putting the
full
document in
document,
the public domain, but we're going to share the information with everyone.
So, just to clarify, we get this report today, and in 2 months, depending on how 6 weeks to 2 months, depending on how consultations run, it's to the House. That's the time frame that we're looking at. So
Maybe
we're now in April,
June.
May, June. So then by
Summer.
Yeah, we want to get it out there before the start of the
next Thursday.
Next Thursday. That's the plan.
That is awesome.
That is very awesome.
I'll tell you, Ivan, you know that
Yes.
I sometimes have sight of the Blue app that I don't really use, but I sometimes have sight of it. And
I need to do. She talk about Facebook. she got this major gripe with Facebook because it has triggered her, right? And she got a problem with I saying Melee Monday because we
Yes,
know what
I do.
Melee Monday is, but
so
it
I
triggers me.
don't do the Blue app because I step back for mental health reasons and
Decompress, yes.
to decompress. It really was taking up a lot of time.
It does.
But I step back from there. But I sometimes get sight. Someone may show me something. I sometimes get sight of it.
Yeah, the screenshot and send you some stuff.
And I saw a comment recently. There was some dialogue happening where someone, don't quote me because I don't remember who it was, but someone was asking along the lines of, what exactly is it that we want as Anguillians? And I think that's a really good question. What is it that we want as Anguillians? And I smiled. It was just today because I smiled because one of the commenters said, we want a minimum wage, and then it went on to a living wage, so a minimum livable wage. And so I smiled knowing that I was coming in here today with the minister, knowing that I would get to ask him, how close are we to having, is it a minimum wage, a livable wage? What is it that we are hoping to get out of this report?
It's actually both.
So it's a minimum livable wage.
Right. But I want to say caution that this represents the start.
Okay.
I have not seen the report as yet. But given the experience of other countries who have done this for many years, they have instituted mechanisms that allows for review, for revision, right? So I believe we're going to be looking at that same sort of scenario where we may start off initially with sort of mechanisms for cost of living and adjustments or whatever. I don't know. Let me not preempt what they report because I have utmost faith in the chairman and the members of
Me
the
too,
committee.
my spirit animal.
Right?
We, we were lucky to have them
But-
on here as guests.
Right, but I will say from my readings of other territories and what they have done, we have to also look at whatever we're going to start with. It has to be able to reflect as in the years to come how things change in terms of cost of living and everything.
Let me ask one quick question before Glennie, because I know she got a lot here. Now I give her the next 7 minutes. I just got 1 minute to ask a question. I don't want to misquote you, but I'm paraphrasing. At one point in the house, you said you were going to look at the Labor Relations Act. You termed it as cottage cheese.
Swiss cheese.
Swiss cheese. You said it had a lot of
Full of
holes.
holes.
Wasn't it?
Going towards the minimum wage legislation, would we see some mirroring in filling those holes in the Labor Relations Act?
My brother, we have been working on that from day one I came into office.
Is that bad? I mean, honest. Is it that bad?
With COVID, with everything, the Labor Relations Act has outlived its.
But it just came.
Yeah, but let me not be extremely critical to say that it's no longer worth the paper it's written on, because it is serving its purpose.
Glennie was just.
No, it is serving its purpose.
I
So let me be clear. It is serving its purpose. But there are fundamental issues with it that we have been grappling with since we got into office. Okay?
Give us
And
2 issues, for example.
like for example, right now, issues with service charge. Right? We are trying to regulate the whole thing of, because service charge is a very hot button issue in government.
Touch that.
With the whole COVID and persons having to go on quarantine, persons had to actually end up taking
Vacation time.
And so forth.
Yeah.
You know? And so these are just 2 of the issues that we are seeking to address in it.
So it didn't really cover like sickness. Nobody catered for pandemics.
Right. So the revisions are going to be more futuristic looking
Okay.
in terms of catering for issues coming up in the future. So right now we are almost at the end of the round of revisions, and I'm hopefully within the next month or so to have those revisions before EXCO and to bring them out to public consultation.
Consultations.
So, yeah. That's an important word. And consultation for us doesn't mean informing you about something. It means actually allowing you an opportunity, a platform to dialogue and share your thoughts with us. And I will tell you, I'm very pleased with the feedback I've been getting from the workers across the island. Because I think they are seeing that this administration and this minister in particular puts his money where his mouth is. That I'm actually out there really looking out for the interest of the workers. 150%.
I'm actually glad that you touched on that, because I remember the previous consultations that were had as it relates to the Labor Relations Act. And a number of persons that showed up at those consultations were employers and not employees. Because, and speaking to a number of employees, and I would ask, why aren't you at the consultations? For fear of being victimized by the same employers who were there. So I'm happy to hear that the employees are engaging, and hopefully during the consultation process, it will allow space for interaction directly with the employees, even if you have to go to them. Backing up a lot, this is just a whole lot of wrapping up. The service charge that you spoke about. I know that it is not regulated. It's not a law. It has led me to some problems, because if I receive terrible service, I will tell you I'm not paying it, because essentially service charge is a tip. I'm saying this clear as day. Service charge is a tip. That is already your tip. I am not required to have to tip you more unless your service was exceptional. In most places, service charge is about 15%.
Some places have taken it up recently though.
And I noticed and I'll say it, I noticed over the Easter weekend when I was looking and perusing some Easter brunch menus, I noticed certain establishments plus 18% service charge. I go, ooh. And then you still have space for tip underneath. I'm just saying, some places service may be very exceptional and you may want to put on top of. But I always, how does that come into play?
Were you eating there at 18% service charge, you know?
I didn't tell you I ate there. I told you I perused the menus.
Are you West End people? Because I had a hotel belt. Are you way up there, man?
I did end up going to one, but that's besides the point. Stop counting me. I think the point I was trying to get at is, if you're looking at some places, let's, for the sake of argument, in the few minutes we have, in the US, it is frowned upon if you go to a restaurant and you do not leave a tip, because that is how they make their living, on tips. In Europe, tips are not expected, and that is an additional bonus. People may tell you may leave $1 or $2 tip because they are paid a livable wage. How do we tie in what seemingly is that we are expecting of the two cultures? One, tip plus built-in service charge. And then how does the livable minimum wage play into that? Because I know, and this is not a dig at anybody in the tourism industry, because I know that a lot of persons depend on their service charge to live. Are we looking at regulating that service charge so that it is in line with the minimum livable wage? And how does that all play out?
I don't want to preempt the report,
Okay.
quite honestly. But what I will say is, I get complaints all the time. Labor Department gets complaints that employers sometimes
Skim.
Well, I'm
Thief.
no, don't put
Take
me in
control.
trouble, Ivan. Don't put
You
me
didn't
in
say
trouble.
nothing.
Don't
I
put me
saying
in
what
trouble.
it
But
is
the
saying.
Act does
Right?
state who is supposed to be on the Service Charge Committee.
But I think some employers have been accused of dipping very heavily.
They've been a little bit heavy-handed.
Into the service
Favoring.
charge to the detriment of the workers, right? And so these amendments will help to regularize or to regulate that a little better.
I always had a question about this. Like, how do you see the accounts? Who's monitoring the accounts of these establishments to show that is the percentage?
But
that's-
you know,
but that's why
the
you have a
service charge
search
committee is
committee.
always a combination of employees and employer
Yeah,
representatives.
but that covers from my audit little background. That covers quite a few things that you would not necessarily see on a certain level. Definitely they'll have somebody from accounting and what's not, but you're not really seeing what is, especially over festive. I'm saying you could hide stuff. Like I've been in the industry. I spent time in audit work. I understand. I would never forget Dr. Vineyard. When I walked into his class, I got excited. The man started my statistics class in university. He opened the door, he closed the door, he put a book on the table, the text, he said, I'm going to teach you how to lie with statistics. I leaned forward. Not that I want to learn to lie with statistics.
Yes,
because
you did.
Yes, I did.
That's why
Actually,
you
yes, I
leaned
did. But he showed you, like, this thing about percentages, man, one little decimal point.
Yeah.
And you could, hey. So I understand those things. So I know you're there looking very intently. You don't want to see because you probably have some cases where he's laughing though. So we're gonna leave that alone. I have nothing else to say. But I'm saying like, okay, I have nothing else to say before he can't go certain places eating 28%.
Listen, Ivan. It's 18% plus 13% growing sustainably together. Plus a 2% environmental fee.
Which is illegal.
No, I'm going to say this. Is it illegal? I just think that it's not illegal because I could charge whatever fee I want. I think that this is an aside, Minister. I'm sorry. But this is an aside. I think that it needs to be clarified that it is not a government fee. Because way too many people think it is a government fee,
yeah.
and they don't realize it is actually a fee that is going towards the establishment. It's the environmental fee and the takeout fees that are now getting to me. There's some establishments that charge a takeout fee, but that's my final bit. Take us out of here, Ivan.
Minister, it has been an absolute pleasure. We compact a lot into this 1 hour. I think our radio partners will be happy that we kept it to 1 hour, but you definitely have to come back because I'm not going to let you read that report today, digest it for yourself, and not give us any scoop. So as soon as you get to cabinet, we're going to schedule you to come back here and give us the exclusives.
Definitely.
All right, it has been a pleasure having you. Any parting words for the listening audience? I know they're excited that they're going to hear about the minimum wage. I know they're excited that you're doing some things in immigration. Does the census fall under you?
No.
No?
That's under finance.
That's under
Great.
finance? Okay.
Actually,
We're gonna
the
have the
Minister of Sustainability, that's one of them.
Okay, well, we're going to touch that.
We have them lined up.
We have them lined up. So your parting words and then we're out.
My parting words would be, as a minister in this administration, we are delivering on what we have promised to deliver on.
Awesome.
Change could not wait.
All right. And on that note, this has been another excellent episode of Progress Report. You are listening to us live on our radio partners. We salute you. Radio Anguilla, the Nation Station, NBR Grace FM, Upbeat Radio, Cool FM, streamed everywhere online. YouTube, shout out to the guys at Dites. Big shout out to our producer in the background. You never see him, you never hear him, but he's always there, Mr. Carvel Fleming of Levrock Studios. And from me, your humble servant, and the star of the show, Gleniva, thank you for listening.
Okay.